Hello, everyone's Forest Focus. As Nottingham Forest looks to beat one of their Champions League rivals on Sunday to move a step closer to joining the European elite once again. Can they beat Newcastle United as they did last season at St James's Park, or will the home team make it a double over Forest this term? Joining me to give the opposition view, as ever, when we face Newcastle is Rob Smyth. Good evening, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Good. Yourself?
Good. We were just discussing the state of the world and the exciting times that we're living in. So yeah, I'm looking forward to talking football. Yeah, definitely. Right. Let's talk football, as we say. Then Newcastle. I didn't realise you slid to seventh. Recent form looks a bit wobbly after an incredible run. I think you've lost 2 home games in a row and got tanked by Man City. So us Forest fans are sitting there a bit nervously after the Fulham game. How are you feeling after your recent form?
I think after the both results came in at the weekend, I think both sets of fans will be sitting there probably with a similar kind of feeling, a bit nervous, not knowing what to, expect, because especially from our point of view, I think it's 3 defeats in 4 after such an amazing run, which propelled us into the Champions League places. We kind of hit a bit of the buffers, and then sandwiched in between that, we qualified for the Carabao Cup final. So it's been a funny time since we last played, and I don't really know what Newcastle is going to show up, and I think even Eddie Howe and the management team are a bit wary of that kind of thing as well, because there was no rhyme or reason for the Man City result. Yes, we've got a horrendous record there, one of the worst in Premier League history, but still on the back of the kind of form we were in, I was expecting us to put up a bit of a fight, and it was possibly the worst performance under Howe since he came to the club in 2021. So for me, it's a bit of a flick of a coin ahead of Sunday's game.
Any reasons for this recent form? I suppose the obvious speculation of people like me who don't see Newcastle all the time is, the Carabao Cup finals a distraction, and you've probably got a few injuries, which we'll get into. Is there any specific thing that you can put your finger on why it's slipped a little bit lately?
I think for me, it's kind of a mix of 4 things. I don't think you cannot say the cup final is a distraction. It's been such a long time for the club for not win anything. I think even if you've got a great mindset, it's going to be distraction. I think the run of form before that was so spectacular that there was always going to be a run off. We have had injuries. And I think the big one is the fact is that for 3 transfer windows in a row, we've not significantly strengthened the first team. And that's showing a bit of bite now, where the bench looked quite strong, but actually it's really stretched a little thin in terms of quality rather than quantity, and that's even seen by the likes of Elliot Anderson now playing for you guys. He would have definitely got run out in the last few weeks, and it just shows you why it kind of all these kind of factors have converged together to kind of hit the rocky patch at the wrong time, really, and that's why Sunday's game is so vital to kickstart hopefully a bit of form that can lead us into a good run of form before the cup final, because otherwise, like when we faced Man United a few years ago, it could end up going in to be a bit of a damp squib.
Yeah, I guess if you look at like your bench, I know Trippier played the last game, but you see like, Trippier's there, Callum Wilson's back, Nick Pope's been in and out, and Miguel Almiron, and you say they're good players, but are they probably fading forces now who you probably should have moved on in the last year?
Well, Wilson his horrendous injury record probably has prevented him from a move. Trippier probably should have gone last summer, but again, I think Howe was hesitant to get away. Pope's a funny one because I think Dubravka, the keeper who's in the sticks at the minute, would have gone in January if Pope had been fit, because there was an offer on the table from Saudi Arabia. Pope got injured. Dubravka had this amazing run of form that coincided with this amazing run for the team, so it became almost undroppable. And so I think, but the same with the other signings. There's a lot of players there who, while may give you a good cameo, a good appearance off the bench, such as a Harvey Barnes or an Emil Kraft, the quality is not there. The quantity is, but it's just we've got a strong first 11 if all fit, but after that it's super subs and a bit of, like you say, fading and aging quality.
I guess the big one, there's probably 2 big ones, aren't there, at the moment? It's central defence looks like a problem, so you could obviously talk about that, but also Joelinton, who is a slight. He walks the line of discipline, doesn't he? But he is a good footballer, and it feels like he's a big miss for you. Is that the main concern for you at the moment going into this?
Yeah, massive miss, Joelinton. I think like a lot of people will say this. There's a couple of players at each club where you realise that they're good players, but you don't realise how influential they are on the team until they slip out with an injury. And it's shown that axis, especially with Tonali and Bruno relies on the three of them working together. Some of the players that have dropped in have been great. Willock on occasion has been fantastic. Miley, Longstaff put in a great shift, but that three-man team really works hard. And then, like you say, switching to the defence, it's been strange. One of the things that Eddie Howe came to Newcastle as was that he wasn't a good defensive coach, and what he actually did was shape a fantastic defence, especially the year they qualified for the Champions League. This year's been so hit and miss because there's been a raft of injuries and people in and out. So we've had new fullbacks, young fullbacks who are still learning the trade. Botman coming back, who is probably our best centre half, if we're being honest, coming back from injury. He's performed well, but he's still coming back from a career-threatening injury. And then you've got the likes of Shaw and Byrne. And Byrne is probably up there with looking at player for the season at the minute, but pace is not his strong point. And Shaw was doing really well, but has come back from a recent injury and has looked a bit shaky. So for me, for Forest, they've got something to really go at there, especially with the pace that they've got running through the team.
So this is a bit off the top of your head again, sorry, but what would a predicted 11 look like to you?
Well, I think for me, because Man City was not just such a bad result, but such a horrendous performance, I could see how making an unusual move for him, 2 or 3 changes. It wouldn't surprise me if this is the game that Pope comes back in for Dubravka. Not that he did anything wrong at the weekend, but I just think this might be the time where he thinks I can give him a run of games before the cup final. I think I think Livramento will come back in at right back for Trippier. I think they'll go back to a more bog standard 4 at the back with Shaw and Byrne and Hall at left back. Hall again didn't look great against Man City, but apart from that, he's probably been one of the players of the season. I think in midfield, you have to play Bruno and Tonali, and Joelinton's not going to be back. I think he might drop in Miley, who came on at half-time at the weekend and made a real difference, at least ran about a bit and looked like he was, putting a foot in. And then up front, it kind of picks itself because, unfortunately, we've not got the depth on the bench. It'll be Gordon on the left, I believe, Murphy on the right, and Isak through the middle. With, again, a bit of option off the bench with Wilson back and now Harvey Barnes. But I think that's the strongest 11 we can play at the minute.
The Miley one's interesting. I was assuming it would be like, Longstaff will come back in if Willock's had a bad game, but Longstaff hasn't had a great season either. Then has he? By the same
no, he's not. He's not performed well, and the fans do get on his back quite a bit. I think more because he's a homegrown lad. But I think what's been disconcerting most recently is that before he would at least kind of always be like your 6 or 7 out of 10. But this season he's been more of like around a 5. And I think even though he's only played a few games, Miley has shown more in those games he's played. And I just think how used to be Longstaff used to be one of his number 1 guys, especially in that Champions League season. But again, I think the club might be passing him by, and Miley might have just edged him ahead, at least in terms of offering a bit of freshness in there. So because he can do more or less everything that Longstaff does, but with a bit more guile and a bit more legs as well.
The other player I was going to ask you about was Murphy, because obviously Newcastle tried to vary some degree, quite a big one, I think, to sign Elanga. You had Almiron, you had Barnes. Murphy always felt like an afterthought, but he seems to be one of the main men now. I obviously play FPL, and his name's always popping up with a goal or an assist. Has he cemented that place then?
I think on form, to be fair to him, he has, and he's been playing really well. He's playing above and above the skin, something like Almiron did a couple of years ago, if you remember. He kind of had this amazing purple patch, and it's the same that's happening for Murphy. He's got an amazing understanding with Isak, a bit old school, cuts to the byline, whips across in, a lot of pace. He was nailed on to start the season at right wing forward. Had a great pre-season and had a few dodgy games at the start, and Harvey Barnes displaced him. Barnes got an injury and Murphy came back in and he's made the shirt his own. It's still a massive surprise how well he's doing, because I do think he's playing out of his skin, but I don't think he's a long-term solution for us. I think he's a playing well, playing amazing. You can't take away from him. Again, probably in the top 3 or 4 players for us this season. But long term, I still think they'll go out in the summer, and that's the only position, right wing forward, that they've not strengthened in any way, shape or form since the takeover in 2021. So it's a big position, and it wouldn't surprise me if they spend big on that position in the summer.
Just before we get into some more general thoughts on the game, just on this team, what is it about them that would worry you? We know where the strengths are, obviously, like Isak, Gordon, Guimaraes are the top players. What about the main weaknesses that we've seen of late?
I think the big thing for me is, I said it the other day, is that they're just so inconsistent sometimes, is that you can't guess from game to another. That they can go and play one of the best performances of the club I've ever seen against Arsenal in the second round of the Carabao Cup to get through to the final, and then have that Man City team. And I just can't see where the inconsistency comes from. The ironic thing is that with Howe, it used to be the fact is that consistency was their identity, and now it's almost flipped the other way. And the other thing that worries me is just the defence through the middle. I think for so long this season, they've outperformed, kind of stats, form and everything. And eventually somebody with pace, a bit like Mamouche did at the weekend, will get to them and will show very quickly how. And that's why I think Pope might come in, because he suits that slower backline better, because he can be a bit more of a sweeper keeper. Whereas Dubravka stays on his line a bit more. So that's the thing that I would, ahead of Sunday, that I'm kind of most apprehensive about, is the fact that defence can be got at. Man City showed it. And if I was Nuno and Forest, I'd be working on that all week.
Let's talk a little bit more about that game, and obviously in more detail. But just before we do, a word for the Trent Nav. It's on Sunday, as Rob said, and it's on TV. So that means you can watch it at the Nav on either of the two big screens. There's also a screen indoors if you're lucky enough to fit in there. Get your lunch there from the pizza kitchen. They also, if you get there early enough, you can get a Sunday lunch. So do go down to Nav, enjoy the game with them, and thanks as ever for their support. Right, this game in particular then, the interesting dynamic is, like you say there, normally with both our teams, you probably know what you're going to get from them 9 times out of 10. It feels like both are in slightly erratic, was a word Temps used on Monday for us. Are we both a little bit vulnerable, and that adds an air of kind of uncertainty around both teams in this game, you think?
Yeah, because I think if I was looking at it from your point of view, I'd be sitting, what Newcastle am I going to get? Am I going to get the rip-roaring one from the Carabao Cup run that's been amazing, or am I going to get the one from Man City that was kind of, they didn't even have to get out of third gear to beat us? And so if I was Forest, what would I do? If I was going to St James's Park, sit back, try and roll up the crowd, make them, really get angsty, hit them on the counter, because we are really successful at that, especially with pace. And all of a sudden, if 20 minutes in, you go 1-up, the goal down. St James's Park can be a fortress and can be amazing, but also on the flip side, it can work against the team. So, but then on the flip side for Newcastle, I look at it and go, what Forest are we going to get? You look at where they are in the table. Formally placed for a European slot, but also the form has been a bit wobbly of late. So I think it's ironic. So I think I said the same thing when we met earlier in the year. Bit of a flip of the coin. I think a bit of the flip of the coin, and I don't think you can take much from form. I don't think you take much from past results. I think it's just going to be one of kind of see who shows up and wins it big on the day. I don't think there's too much you can put too much onus on what's happened before, or the game earlier this season, at the City ground, because we're all in different spaces since then.
Yeah, and I wonder as well if like us playing away with our style of play isn't the worst thing compared to playing at home, where you very deservedly beat us on the day, and you did dominate the game in midfield with that axis. Do you think it's going to be won and lost there again, especially without Joelinton? That feels like a factor that muddies the water a bit.
Yeah, that's going to be you look at the impact, especially in the second half of the game at the City ground, that Joelinton had, and he was irrepressible. And I just think it's going to be such a miss. And Miley's such a different player and works in such a different way with the other two. He's the best replacement, but he's not a replacement because you can't replace Joelinton. So again, as well as looking at that City game, from Nuno and the team's point of view of kind of hitting on the counter attack and using pace to get in behind, you don't have to do much to unsettle that midfield when Joelinton's not in there. Although Bruno likes to put his foot in, and Tonali does as well, it changes the dynamic so much. And again, it's an area to exploit. And again, if you can get some joy in the first 10, 15, 20 minutes, it can have a really impact on the team.
Any when you think, from what you were saying about your team there and their weaknesses, any players of ours that trouble you this time? I mean, you might say the same players you always say. I don't know. All of them. Okay.
I think the big thing for me, and it's so bittersweet, is how good Anderson's been. How Anderson is fit into the team, and playing a different role to what he'd been kind of playing at Newcastle as well. So it's like that old, it's that old cliche, isn't it? You just think, at one point he's going to score against Newcastle, and you're just always waiting for it to happen. So him, and even people like Matt Sells, when he was at Newcastle, he was absolutely horrendous. One of the worst goalkeepers we'd ever signed. But again, that was like almost a decade ago. And he's such a fantastic player, brings such a calmness to the team. And then obviously the big man up front, Chris Ward. Last time we played at St James's Park, he had a bit of joy, shall we say, in that result. And I think he's such a handful. And I think the only thing we've got going for us with Ward is that, Burn loves that aerial battle like Wood does. So I think that I'm not saying that one's going to dominate the other, but it's going to be a fascinating battle. And I just think from, looking through the entire team for Forest, it's just, there's so much, there's a lot of dynamism in there. Probably like us would have wanted to add more in the January transfer window to freshen it up a bit. But great squad on paper, doing amazing so well at minute. May have hit a bit of a bump in the road, but a bit like we did a couple of years ago when we qualified for the Champions League. You can't help but be in that team and must be excited to be able to go and play every week, because we're on the cusp of achieving something that in modern football, taking apart what everything Forest have done in the history, would be an amazing achievement. And so games like Sunday, the ones that surely you've got to get up for and think it should. On paper, I think it could be a cracking game at the weekend. I can't not see it. Famous last words, but it's not got a 0-0 written on it at the minute. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, they're always good games between us. So the Carabao Cup game was as well.
Yeah.
And, even when we were struggling at the lower ends of the table, they were always close matches. I mean, you tended to win them, but, well, hopefully this one's different. Just on Anderson, before we move on, did you see when he played for you the strengths on the other side of his game, and in terms of defensively, without the ball, winning the ball back? Was that evident there then or not?
No, and that's the thing that's been a really nice surprise, because ironically, one of the players that we've needed at Newcastle for so long has been a 6 type player, or a 4, and he was. I think I said when I was on here before, he'd always played in a 10 or a out wide right or out wide left, and always been, the onus had been on his attacking play. So watching him, I watched several games of Forest this year, and it's been a revelation really that it is. And I'm not surprised that he had in his locker, because he was so talented. But it's not only that he deployed there, but he's fitted in there so well. And I just think he would have fitted into that position so well at Newcastle. And yet another reason why it's a shame that he had gone. And I'm so pleased for him. I hope he has a bad game on Sunday for obvious reasons. But it's also nice. I saw this week a little bit of tittle-tattle about potential England call-up. And from what I'd seen from him this season, it would be well-deserved. And I just think it's great. It's just a shame that it's not in the black and white.
No, we did discuss that on today's podcast, actually, about whether he should be in the squad. I mean, I had him in my last 2 England squads because of the way, he's an all-round midfielder.
Yeah, no. I don't see why not, because for me, I look at a player like that, and a bit like Gordon for us in a different ways, that say Gordon can play across the front 3 roles for England. Somebody like Anderson plays as 6, can play as an 8, can play as a 10, can play as a 11 or a 7. So why wouldn't you have players of that versatility, at least to try in the England squad? Because it's a bit like the Milner used to be for England. You can just play, you can deploy them anywhere at any point, even if it's 10, 15 minutes. So at least give them a go, flipping out.
Yeah, it could be a really good tournament footballer, definitely. Just looking at your fixtures then, obviously it's us, and then it's Liverpool next, then West Ham, then the Cup final, and then it looks to me like you've got a really good run heading basically into the last 3 games, which are tricky. So obviously all to play for, but the 6-point gap, are you viewing this as must win, or at least must not lose? 9 points would be a big gap to overhaul if we can.
No, for me, after the horror show at Man City, not that I ever thought we'd ever get in there because of a horrendous record. For me, this is a must win. Got to put a bit of a marker down, not just for the league and the Champions League race, but to get that kickstart of a run of form to head into the cup final. It's vital for me. Like you say, the games after that, the Liverpool game, we hardly ever get a result against Liverpool. So it's a bit like the Man City games that we play at Man City home and away and Liverpool home and away every season. They just write off, and anything else is a massive bonus. West Ham, complete unknown with Potter, and then, like you say, before we know it's the cup final. And I think we also fit in there the next round of the cup as well, which is Brighton, which is a tricky game. It's at home, but we lost it to them at home already this season. So for me, I'm probably going to sit at the end of this and say I think it's probably going to be 2-2. I think I've said that for the last few times, because I don't know, these games always have a 2-2 feeling for me. But for me, got to win. We need to win, and it's vital. And I think there's going to be it's from both sides as well, and that's why I think it should be a cracking contest.
Is that an attitude you think that pervades through the crowd when you were talking about, they might get a bit antsy, they still would expect to beat a team or believe they should be beating a team like Forest with this table as it is, and the stakes are getting higher, aren't they now?
Yeah, I think for me, I don't think there's an expectation anymore. I think there's a realisation, a bit like when we played Bournemouth recently, that there are teams that are coming up alongside us or on our coattails who are as good or just as good or better. I think, but I just think it's a general mood in any club that if you can get it the home side after 20 minutes, 0-0, maybe you've got dominated the play, exploiting a few chances. I just think the general mood after that, the Man City defeat was so bad, it's crept up kind of a bit of an undercurrent among the fan base where there'd been such a high that we'd got to the cup final and had this run, and everyone's just a bit weary now to thinking, is it all going to fall apart again just at the wrong time like it did before? And so I think that's the overriding feeling. That's why I think it's so vital to get not just a result against you guys, but also a positive performance, because if not, it will just, again, that mood will just start to fester and rise and rise and rise.
Just lastly, before we finish then, obviously there's 5 Champions League places. I think that's 99.9% certain now. Who are your 5 to make it as we sit here right now?
Right now?
Obviously Liverpool.
Yeah, Liverpool. I think Liverpool, Arsenal, Forest, Man City, and then 5th, I'm going to say Newcastle. I don't actually think we will do it, but that's just heart over head. But I think Liverpool, Arsenal, and Forest are nailed on more or less now. City as close to nailed on as you can get, because I just think that they're on a good run of form. It might be hidden a bit, and they've spent all that money in January. I just can't see them not doing it. And then I think 5th is a bit of a bum fight between, I think, 4, 5, 6 clubs really. And I just think it's for, like, I look at it personally from a Newcastle fan, kind of the next 3 or 4 games is all about getting in a good place for the cup final, and then, like you say, afterwards, win, lose or draw. After that, it's just got to hit the ground running and just have a go, throw everything at it, and why not, and just see what happens. But I think 3 out of the 5 are more or less sealed now, and that includes you guys, which is great. I'm so glad. I think it'd be fantastic. Imagine, well, as you can, I'm sure many watching this and yourself will be sitting there thinking of the City Ground on Tuesdays and Wednesdays in the Champions League. It will be a hot ticket.
Yeah, I mean, on tomorrow, as we record this, it'll be on yesterday's show. We'll probably talk about whether we could sign Ademola Lookman if we get in the Champions League, and all those crazy football manager type signings. It is exciting. It's interesting. I agree that 3 teams are pretty nailed, although I don't think Forest are one. I mean, Liverpool, Arsenal. I think City will get in now because they'll money talks in the end, and they've got a better team. And then I think Forest, Newcastle, Bournemouth. Feels like they're playing for 2 places. Maybe Chelsea can turn it around, but that feels like a ship that's the rudder's turning the wrong way, and it feels like there's a lot of negative momentum around Maresca, which happened at Leicester actually. But they figured it out in the end. But they had a much better team than the rest of the league. So I wonder if Chelsea are going to fall away. And maybe I'm wrong about that. They've got injuries as well. So us, Newcastle, and Bournemouth. I mean, logic says that we've got more points and we'll be all right. Newcastle have got such a strong squad, but Bournemouth are mad, aren't they? Like, obviously they went to your place, racked of injuries, played us and murdered both of us. So
unbelievable.
You'd be foolish to rule them out, wouldn't it?
They were just. It is one of those kind of, like, if you'd not had in the recent years Leicester winning the league and all these kinds of fairy tales, it would be the ultimate fairy tale, because they're just you can't work them out. They're that, like, when they played us, they just played us off the park, and it was a different game to the Man City game, so it wasn't the worst defeat of the season, but they just were fantastic, great to watch. And same in your game, it was just kind of not where's it come from, but it's just kind of on paper, like you say, on paper they'd be nowhere near it, and that's not an offence to them, but they'd probably be 7th, 8th maybe. But good luck to them, and I think it's great. I think the fact that you guys, Bournemouth, the likes of ourselves, are all within the hunt for it, and at least I think we'll at least get some kind of European football, hopefully Champions League. But if not, it's shaking it up a bit, and because you always have to worry, don't you, that you look at it from like next season where you think, well, surely Chelsea can't be bad for that long, Tottenham can't be that bad for that long, Man United can't be bad for that long. Here's hoping. But eventually, someone's going to get it right at one of these places, and there will be a year when we perhaps have a fallow period. But at the minute, it's relatively positive. We might be a bit inconsistent, but you've got to look on the bright side of life. We've got a cup final. We're still in the FA Cup, and potentially, still in the running for the Champions League. And that's why games like Sunday are, what you want to watch as a fan.
Yeah, I think you're right. Let's see how it goes. I think it'll be a good game. Rob said 2-2. I think I find it difficult to predict because it's such a volatile game, it feels like. So we shall see how it turns out. As ever, if you enjoyed this, do us a favour, hit like on the video, hit subscribe, do consider a membership or Patreon. You can buy your merch from the website as well now. Have I got a mug here? No, I haven't. That's good. I should have bought a mug. forest-focus.co.uk, or just give us a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. But if you buy merch, there's 3 or 4 different kinds of mugs, hoodies, t-shirts. Oh, I got a t-shirt on? No, I had one earlier and took it off. Smooth as ever. There you go. Never mind. No, I gave Temps the other 2 for his birthday. Okay. Incredible salesmanship as ever. Right. We'll be back Sunday after the game with Mark and Emily, and then Monday with Kelvin Wilson and a couple of the regulars. And then we'll turn our attention to Arsenal. Who have you got in that midweek game? Oh, it's Liverpool, isn't it?
It's Liverpool. So, I just won't watch it, won't expect a result, and will be thoroughly miserable afterwards when we get probably tonked 4-0.
As we record this, they're just beating Villa. They just gifted Salah a goal, which is, exactly what you want to do when you play Liverpool.
Yeah, make a mistake like that. It's just what you want.
Yeah, just play a back pass straight to him. It sounds like that's what Villa have done. So, yeah, I'm going to go and watch the rest of that game and try to survive a sleepover when my daughter's got 2 friends over. So, fun times ahead this evening. Rob, thank you very much. Brilliant.
Thanks very much. Enjoy the game.
Enjoy the game. Yes, we shall have Rob back on. Maybe we'll play you in the FA Cup still. Hopefully so. 4th time this season. That'd be a record.
In the final.
In the final, exactly. Right. Have a good day, everyone. And if we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.